Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2008 Marvel film Punisher Warzone. The film is directed by Alexi Alexander and it stars Ray Stevenson, Dominic West, Julie Benz, Doug Hutchinson, Colin Salmon and Wayne Knight. Now this is or was intended to be the sequel to the 2004 Punisher film that starred John Wayne and John Travolta. However, it took a few years to get developed and Thomas Wayne passed on the project. He didn't like the direction it was going in, so they decided to kind of reboot it, the Punisher franchise, and cast Ray Stevenson as Frank Castle. This time round, we see a grizzled veteran that is Frank Castle. He has been active for about 5 years, I think it is, and he has racked up a considerable amount of kills in his mission to take out organised crime and criminals. He kind of He's starting to become a little bit complacent, and in this film he accidentally kills an undercover agent, which he feels terribly guilty for. This has never happened before, and he feels a sense of loyalty to protect this undercover agent's wife and young daughter. However, he has crossed paths with Dominic West's character, Billy, who he drastically injures, and he transforms into Jigsaw, who goes essentially on a rampage through the city, hell-bent on taking down Frank Castle. Right, what are my thoughts on Punisher Warzone? Well, I wanted to do this review because sadly, you may or you may not know, Ray Stevenson has just recently passed, which is very, very sad indeed. Only young at 58. And he's one of those actors, Ray Stevenson, that you could argue never really broke through to, like, being like a main lead in a film. This is one of the few films that he did that was mainstream. But I've always admired Ray Stevenson's work. I enjoyed him on Dexter. I thought his character on there was very, layered and complex. Obviously, we've seen him in the Marvel films. He did Rome, which was a big hit a few years ago. He was in the Three Musketeers. He's been in the Accident Man films with Scott Adkins, and one of my favourite zombie-type horrors, Outpost, which I intend to revisit and review on the channel. So I wanted to revisit some of his films, and I thought this was a good place to start because this is essentially, if you like, a Marvel film that a lot of people completely dismiss. It was pretty much a massive flop when it came out, this film. It didn't do well at all. In fact, I might be wrong on this now, but I think it's the least successful of any Marvel film. Now, this is obviously pre, Marvel Cinematic Universe, just, really. But it is still a Marvel film, and a lot of people, like I say, just completely, dismiss this film as rubbish. Really, now I remember seeing this when it came out because I quite enjoyed the Thomas Jane Punisher film. I thought that was pretty good, and I was hoping for a sequel. And when we didn't get a sequel to that film, and they kind of rebooted it into this film, I was a bit anxious about it. I couldn't. At the time, because I didn't know a lot about Ray Stevenson at the time, I couldn't envisage who this guy was who was going to play the Punisher, looked nothing like Thomas Jane and all this kind of stuff. And then I remember watching it and thinking, do you know what? That's a pretty decent film. I actually didn't mind that at all. It's fast-paced. It doesn't waste its time on unnecessary plot points. It gets straight to the point. It's action-packed. It's brutal. It's violent. And for me, it kind of gives you what you want from a film like this. I also understand why, it's not necessarily rated brilliantly because it is pretty basic in many aspects. But I think the central performance here of Ray Stevenson, I think he absolutely nailed Frank Castle here. This tortured individual who makes a mistake and kills this undercover cop sort of thing, and he's on the hit list now of not just the mob but the law as well. The Colin Salmon character is hell-bent on hunting him down and bringing him to justice, whereas the rest of the department understand how important Frank Castle is, he's hell bent on bringing him in. So he's got it coming from all angles, and this added storyline of Julie Benz's character and the wife of this guy that Frank Castle has killed and her little daughter adds a little bit of humanity to the film and a little bit of humanity to Frank Castle, which I thought was really, really good, because the film would have been in danger of just having this robotic machine character that just mows people down. So it added a layer of humanity to Frank Castle's character, and we were allowed to see, the skill in Ray Stevenson's acting, because for the first half an hour or something, he doesn't even say a word. It's not one of them films where he needs to in the first half an hour. It's just action-packed, brutal and violent. And then, you start to see the more human side of Frank Castle. But it cleverly, in my opinion, doesn't dwell on that too long. The Julie Benz's character and the little girl. It just does it enough, because this film, like I say, is very, very fast-paced. It charges along at breakneck speed. There's, I think, from looking and researching, I can't remember now, but I think it's around 81 kills or something like that Ray Stevenson has in this film. I mean, that is serious numbers to rack up in what essentially is a comic book film. And it goes full on graphic violence, this film. It's fun to watch if you like that sort of action. I do want to mention here as well, I want to give a special mention to two people. One in particular, Dominic West as Jigsaw, is just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, by watching this, you would never know he was actually English. I mean, there's programs on the TV in the UK, because I think his wife is like a lady, so they kind of live in this big mansion sort of thing, and he's very posh spoken, all this kind of stuff, and then to hear this, proper New York accent coming out of Dominic West, absolutely hamming it up as Jigsaw. I thought he was a very credible villain for Frank Castle, much more than the John Travolta character in the 2004 Punisher. And then you get added on top of that Doug Hutchinson's Looney Bin Jim, who is Jigsaw's brother. They make a formidable pair and are actually quite amusing. It does touch on comedy here and there with some of the one-liners that they come out with, and even some of the one-liners that Frank Castle comes out with. I think this delivers what you want from a Punisher film. Is it as grounded and as realistic as the 2004 one? No, but I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think this kind of treads and leans more heavily into the comic side of the Punisher character, but it absolutely doesn't pull any punches either at the same time. It's nicely shot, nicely lit by the director. I think she did a really, really good job here. And I personally would have liked to have seen more of Ray Stevenson as the Punisher. I don't think he was given enough time to shine in this role. I think it would have been a smart choice, I think, to give him another chance, but you can understand why they didn't, because this film performed so poorly. The Punisher character is a difficult character, I think, to get right on screen. I don't think they absolutely got it right this time round. I think a combination of this version of Frank Castle, the Thomas Jane version of Frank Castle, and even the Dolph Lundgren version of Frank Castle, if you can combine elements of all of them, I think you get somewhere close. And I can't really comment on the Netflix Punisher, from the Daredevil stuff, because I haven't seen any of that stuff yet, but I will hopefully get around to that eventually. So yeah, I think this is a pretty good film. It's not going to blow you away, but it's certainly not, in my opinion, the worst Marvel film I've ever seen. Absolutely it isn't. It's a fun action romp that does, I think, the character justice, and with some great villains and some great action scenes. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoy this review. Stay tuned to the channel. I am going to try and cover, some more Ray Stevenson films. May he rest in peace. Thank you very much for watching, everybody.